All right. Neil Ratner Rock Doc here with a story. The Monterey International Pop Festival took place on June 16th through 18th, 1967, and is significant for the first major American appearances by the Jimi Hendrix Experience, The Who, and Ravi Shankar, as well as being the first large-scale public performance for Janis Joplin and the introduction of Otis Redding to a mass American audience. So today, I thought I would tell you a few things about the Monterey International Pop Festival that you might not know. And as usual, a little background first. All right, so the idea for a festival first came about during a gathering at Cass Elliott's house in 1967. Paul McCartney, John and Michelle Phillips, Cass and Lou Adler were discussing, among other things, the general perception that although jazz was considered an art form, rock and roll, on the other hand, was continually being viewed as a fad, a trend, something that wouldn't last. So the actual idea to stage a festival in Monterey came from Alan Pariser, who had attended the '66 Monterey Jazz Festival. John Phillips and Lou Adler were approached by Alan and his partner Benny Shapiro, who wanted to hire the Mamas and the Papas to headline a blues and rock concert at the Monterey Fairgrounds. And as the story goes, later that night at about 3 a.m, John and Lou, fueled by a good amount of booze and drugs, had decided that it should be a charitable event. And with 6 weeks to go, the Monterey International Pop Festival, a 3-day non-profit event, was about to become a reality. All right. Now, if it wasn't for Paul McCartney, Hendrix wouldn't have been on the bill. Although he was popular in Europe at the time, the Experience's first single, Hey Joe, failed to reach the Billboard Hot 100 chart, and so they were still virtually unknown in the U.S. McCartney knew about him. He insisted that the event would be incomplete without Jimmy, whom he called an absolute ace on the guitar. And he agreed to join the board of organizers. That's Paul McCartney agreed to join the board of organizers on the condition that the Jimi Hendrix Experience perform at the festival. All right. Chip Monk, who would come on to handle lighting and staging, Chip Monk, who you may remember from Woodstock. It's his voice, Woodstock, that you hear. Derek Taylor, who was the publicist for the Beatles. Of course, he had worked with Brian Epstein, the Beatles. He became the publicist for the event. And a board of governors was established that consisted of Donovan, Mick Jagger, McCartney, Jim McGuinn, Terry Melcher, Andrew Loog Oldham, Alan Pariser, Johnny Rivers, Smokey Robinson, Brian Wilson, John Phillips, and Lou Adler. Now, according to Adler, our idea for Monterey was to provide the best of everything: sound equipment, sleeping and eating accommodations, transportation, services that had never been provided for the artists before Monterey. We set up an on-site first aid clinic because we knew there would be a need for medical supervision and that we would encounter drug-related problems. We didn't want people who got themselves into trouble and needed medical attention to go untreated, nor did we want their problems to ruin or in any way disturb other people or disrupt the music. Our security worked with the Monterey police. The local law enforcement authorities never expected to like the people they came in contact with as much as they did. They never expected the spirit of music, love, and flowers to take over to the point where they'd allow themselves to be festooned with flowers. You may have seen pictures of that where hippies are putting flowers in policemen's hats, lapels, whatever. And I'm sure many of you have seen pictures of that, right? Okay. Now, I'll end with a very funny story of an encounter between Pete Townsend and Jimi Hendrix backstage at the festival. During Hendrix's stay in England, he and The Who had seen each other perform, and they were both impressed with and intimidated by each other. So neither wanted to be upstaged by the other. Now, backstage, Townsend began arguing with Hendrix about who would go on first. According to Pete, it was just Jimmy on a chair playing at me like, Don't screw with me. Finally, John Phillips showed up and suggested they flip a coin. Townsend lost. The Who tore through their set with Townsend hacking away at the stage with his guitar doing his usual thing. Later in the evening, Brian Jones introduced Jimi Hendrix as the most exciting guitarist I've ever heard. Townsend watched Hendrix set with Mama Cass, not knowing that Jimmy had something special planned. And when Jimmy got on his knees and lit the guitar on fire before smashing it to pieces, Cass Elliot got really excited. She was sitting next to Pete and she said to Pete, "He's stealing your act, he's stealing your act." And Pete said, "No, he's doing my act." All right, that's my story. Monterey International Pop Festival, very important in the history of rock and roll. And yeah, that's my story. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'll have more stories as the days go on. You know where to find me around the internet. And as I like to tell you, always remember to keep on rocking. All right, bye for now.